welcome to our 113th episode of the Gutenberg Changelog. Dear listeners, I wish you all a happy new year, lots of fun and laughter, good health, and most of all, prosperity and peace. Yes, we took a holiday break, and there are still 3 plugin releases that happened in the meantime. And in today's episode, we will talk about WordPress 6.8, Gutenberg 19.9, 20.0, and 20.1. I'm your host, Birgit Pauli-Haack, curator at the Gutenberg Times and developer advocate at Automatic. Today's co-host is Tammie Lister, OG Gutenberg developer and designer, product consultant, and longtime core contributor to WordPress and BuddyPress. I recently noticed again. Thank you for joining me, Tammie. How are you today?
I am great, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm done with winter, but I think I can control that. So if you're done with winter too, let's help and change the weather if we can do it.
Yeah, I am very done with winter, although it's kind of nice as long as you just don't go outside. But I also like as long as you wrap up warm. I think that's the thing.
Yeah. There are several days that I stay inside, which normally doesn't happen, but yeah.
Yeah, I have a wood burner, which makes winter a little bit more tolerable.
Well, we have central heating, which is very good. So, well, Tammie, you're always on the forefront of web and WordPress development. What are you working on right now, and what are your plans or outlooks for 2025?
Yeah, so I guess over the holidays, I did what a lot of people did, which is I did some tinkering. So a lot of people take time off, and the holidays appears to be the time when they sit down and do a project. And it appeared to be that everybody over the holidays explored with AI development tools. The one that I chose, I did a bit of Bolt, but I also did Cursor specifically, and I was using it as a rubber duck. That's basically for development. So I was doing a lot of that in my kind of work. I've been doing a combination of working on themes, but also working on some product consultancy. And that's been really interesting to kind of balance those, but also looking at from a contribution perspective, stepping back into releases. So really for me, it's with a lot of these tools is how can I get the ideas that are in my head out faster into prototypes rather than maybe them just sitting in my head. But I don't think I'm alone based on what I was seeing on socials and seeing in Slacks. A lot of people were just brewing ideas and just getting them out. So
Yeah, no, I agree. And for those listeners who are not English natives, the rubber ducking is a process
yes.
by developers who talk to actually inanimate object and kind of get
Yes.
it out what they have
Sometimes
in
a
the
rubber
head,
duck.
and that's the rubber duck. And then by way of explaining it to somebody, yeah, they most of the time a solution comes, or at least another avenue to troubleshoot something opens up. So it's a known process, and it's called rubber ducking.
Yeah,
I
and a
really
lot of
like it.
these tools are really helpful for that, particularly
Yeah.
with things like WordPress and Gutenberg. There's always something you don't know about, or maybe there's a feature you haven't got to learn about. So one of the things I was able to do was be like, it could teach me about that area whilst I was learning to code. I also did some things which are completely unrelated to that, but on the newer features, I was able to say like, how would you implement it and teach me as you're doing it each stage, which is really helpful.
Yeah.
It's kind of like having that training guide as well.
Yeah, I really love it. And it prompts you. So speaking of
Yeah.
Cursor AI, yeah, it actually
Yeah.
prompts you. Shall I explain this a little bit to you, kind of thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you say, yes, please do.
Yes.
Like I'm a
Yes.
5-year-old or something.
Yes. Explain it to me like I'm the rubber duck.
Yeah, and then one of the AIs, when I say, please make it readable for a non-technical person,
Yes.
and every time they come with a legal analogy, yeah, legal, and
Oh,
it's can they do this? Trademarks? Well,
yeah.
anyway,
I
but it,
I like whenever you're saying with if you don't set any boundaries with things like that, they try and go above and beyond. They're very like overperforming, so you'll find it be like I watched this when I watched Nick Diego when he did the block challenge, and it was just like I think he just said like make it Christmassy, and it was just like have sparkles, have this, have that, have the other. And I also discovered that if I didn't set like some boundaries, it was suddenly like have this, have the other. So just set some boundaries to it. So a good example from a Gutenberg perspective would be, say, use create block. Scaffolding would be use the components, and knowing things like that means it doesn't like it really likes tailwind. Otherwise, it'll be like put tailwind in it, put tailwind in this, and it's like, yeah, there's some
No.
components we can use. It's okay.
Yeah. But you really need to be knowing something about development to actually guide it also to something that you then also have production,
Yes.
not production
And
ready,
I
but
found that
you
when
can
I was
use. Yeah.
doing things which were not my wheelhouse, which was particularly not WordPress, and I was just doing some different language stuff. And when I completely didn't know the stack I was working with, and it was just like, sure, I don't know if you've just done right or just taken me completely down the wrong path. But then you go through the explain why you did this.
Yeah.
And then it will pick through. And then oftenly it will self-correct itself. And you can be like, can you do this a simpler way? And it'll be like, yes, I can. You're correct. And I don't know if you find that you say please and thank you to it a lot, because I say an awful
Sometimes, yeah.
lot of please and thank you to my AI overlords.
Yeah, and I like that when Nick said, somebody mentioned that. I think Jamie mentioned that when Nick was going through his, you're always very polite,
I am so polite, just in case. Just
just
in
in
case
case.
Terminator is correct, you gotta be polite.
Yeah. Well, but this show, dear listener, is not an AI
No.
show. We could probably talk another 2 hours about
Yes.
it, but we have other things to do today. So
Yeah.
there's the announcement that WordPress 6.8, the release squad is done, the timeline is announced, and the focus is announced. And with the schedule is beta 1 is March 4th. That's pretty much around the corner. Then release candidate is the 25th of March, the first release candidate. And then the final release will be April 15th. And Jonathan DeRosa put up that post, and I want to quote from his post. And he said, the squad is also a bit smaller than usual because of the release being a polish and bug fix release. Also of note, the core tech lead and editor tech lead roles have been combined into a single tech leads role as part of the continued initiative to support more closely coordinated efforts across Gutenberg and core. And that's the quote end. The tech leads are Joe McGill, Jonathan DeRosa, and George Mamadashvili. So that's a great team to put this all together. All 10 release squad members are actually long-time contributors and have been on many releases before. So it's Jeff Paul, Michelle Frechette, JB Orders, Felix Arntz, and Grupananda, and Tammie Lister has raised her hand as a design lead for the release. Yeah. So what does a design lead do on the release?
Yeah, so as with all these roles, there's some keeping things on the track things you do from the design perspective, the about page, getting kind of any materials that are needed for the release. But really the best kind of the fundamentals are if anything has a needs design or design feedback ticket during the release, it's unblocking. That's the best way that I can put it from that. And because this release specifically is a polish and a fix, I'll kind of maybe go into what that really means. It means that most, if not all, of the big features are ready, or we're not really going to be doing so many of those. And I think that that's something that last year actually was requested by the community specifically to focus on. I don't know if we're going to have one, two. Oh yeah, I have no idea. We're just entering this year, so
Yeah.
but I actually, from a design perspective, it's quite good because we have quite a lot of tickets that need design feedback, both in core and in core editor. So being able to look at those right going all the way back and triage them, maybe a good thing to do, because that's often a word, but to explain it the way that triage, or at least the way that I approach triage, is that triage shouldn't leave a ticket in the state that you find it.
Mm-hmm.
So that could be you're adjusting labels, but you're also moving it on. So we have a lot of tickets that they need feedback, but then they need to go to their next state. So just leaving something with a test or a feedback, that's awesome, but it just leaves it with test or feedback. It doesn't move it on. It doesn't. Also, some of these tickets, so if something maybe in 5 years ago was thought to have a design, and I actually discovered this over the holidays, well, just before the holidays, when I was going through my old tickets in the Gutenberg repo, and I discovered that a lot of them have already had different interfaces done. So they're completely invalid tickets now, but because people have been really not so many people have been doing work and there's so many tickets, been able to go back over some of those and saying, okay, well, the interface has changed. Do we still think that this is a valid application, or do we
Yep.
wish it well? And do we want to close it because we've already taken a different approach as a kind of as a project? So
Makes
that's
sense.
one thing that can be done. Those aren't all that common, but also just looking at, from, could something have easy fix? I call them paper cuts. There's often like little things that can be done as well, and I suspect there's going to be quite a few of those from a design perspective. Some little paper cuts we can get in. Design also doesn't just mean visual design. I always like to include like some CSS and styling in there because
Mm-hmm.
of my hybrid
Yeah.
nature as well.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for stepping up to the plate, and thank you for everybody stepping up to the plate and being on the
And there
release.
will be others joining. I think that's always the important thing is there's a post on Make Design about how anyone can just step up and join in. If you have an hour, half an hour a week that you can just sit there and do some triage, that's being involved, and just raise your name and then you can get included in the release.
Excellent. Yes. Yeah. So that's WordPress 6.8. I think we will on this podcast kind of talk about what's going to be in there a little later in the year, maybe after WordCamp Asia, probably have another Gutenberg Changelog episode. We will have one before WordCamp Asia and one after Asia. But we say the Gutenberg plugins keep rolling in. Two big ones and one not so big one. One was 19.9, that was in December. Then the first one in January was 20.0. And then just last week, this week, we were recording this on January 17th. So this week, George Mohammed really just did the 20.1 release candidate. So the changelog we're going to talk about is going to be from the release candidate, but the other two have been released. And I share with you the release post. So let's get started with Gutenberg 19.9. So what was a big change is something that's probably not in any release, but it's in the plugin release, is that the experiments page of the Gutenberg plugin has, Anne McCarthy went through it and give it better titles, a description, and a little bit of an order on the experiments page, because there are now 13 experiments listed on that page. So that is definitely a good thing, especially when you want to check them out and kind of enable
Yeah.
them and play around with the things. What's in the experiments page is kind of a few data views, then all the collaborative editing things and experiments, then some new blocks. The grid layout, the interactive grid layout is in the experiment. So those are all there.
I think often people forget about that page, so it's really nice to see it called out because I think it should remind people that it's there as well.
Yeah.
So another one I'm seeing here is add PHP admin support for environment enhancement and document layout in Storybook. A lot of this is improvements to components and Storybook in general. This kind of reminds me, I'm also seeing like Storybook, 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 and it kind of reminds me of the importance of the design system. I'm kind of going back to that. One of the things we're really looking at in this release is how can we bring that awesome work that's happened in the kind of editor into those other areas of WordPress, and seeing this really good work from the Storybook reminds me of that.
Yeah. So Storybook, just in case you hear this for the first time, don't confuse it with Stylebook. That's a total different thing. But the
Yes.
Storybook is a way of documentation certain components with their attributes and their different options, so you can see them in isolation. And it's actually available on the WordPress GitHub pages. And I will share the link in the show notes. So if you haven't looked at it yet and you are developing for WordPress, it's definitely a place to go and see what's actually in the design system, as Tammie said, and also how you can use it for your own plugins well, not so much themes, but for the plugins or any other admin contributions that you want to do. The next pieces are more like individual blocks that got some enhancements. First up is the cover block, that the image size option for the featured image is now available. You could assign the featured image to be part of the cover block, but you couldn't specify the size for that. So now you can, and which is good for a lot of things. And talking about the featured image, no, it's a new feature. It's not featured image. Sorry. It's about the post template block that you can deeply nest it into the query block. It's like query block inception, over, down, 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 down. Yeah.
And I would say there's another one here, move patterns modal to drop down on query block. And another one as query total block for displaying total query results. The query block is a block that pretty much most agency workers always had to extend or have a variation of, rather than be able to use out of the box for quite a while. And it's not an amazing block. It's just not quite got there because it's so complex and it's so many different variations. So anytime you add a feature, it's just a lot to be able to add a feature. So I think being able to see these improvements are really powerful. And if you remember like where the query block started, I think it's great to see how it's come along. I remember the first mock-ups to try and like get mind around the query block and where it is now. I'm just really excited to see, and also from the extensibility perspective, where it is now, and the fact that I think a lot more cases, probably like at least 30-40%, don't need to extend it now. And I think that we're probably only ever going to get to 50-50 because it's such a complex situation. But being able to get to that from where most couldn't use it is really powerful for the query block.
Yeah, and it's so much the jump from the classic theme to a block theme is that a user can actually get in contact with a query block and really adapt it to what it needs to do. Yeah, how often have I had the request to remove a date or remove the author or remove the category pick? That was all developer oriented kind of thing. Yeah.
And a theme of understanding it, just a theme of being able to understand query block. So one of the big things that just learning as a themer is a real block, a block, a blocker for you as a themer is trying to understand. And it often puts off a lot of people in theming because they may be more on the design side and they're just like, oh, now I've got to learn like the loop. I've got to learn how to do coding and I've got to learn how to do that. Well, with the query block, you don't have to. Doesn't mean if you know it, you can still use it. And I think that was always really important to say when we're talking about query block, that you can use it, but you can also use other methods, or you could extend it and have your own really powerful option. And that's something that I don't think people often hear, is you have an option. And I find that a lot of times it does it for me now, but that little bit that it doesn't, extending it is really powerful as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you mentioned the query total block. That's a new block, and it kind of helps you displaying the query results ranges, so to speak. You get the total results, but it also gives you, so like 12 results found, or in the pagination it says displaying 1 through 10 of 12 or something like that. So, and it gives you a little bit more flexibility in display query related theme designs.
And that's a good note. The query block isn't just a block, it's a block with the blocks. And a lot of our mega blocks, I don't know, nested blocks, a lot of those ones are that. And we're often, well, I don't think we need more terminology, we really don't, but we kind of don't see the complexity of them. And the query block is one of those really complex blocks. Navigation block is similar because of that nesting and because of the complexity inside it. If you look at like even like title, image, the way that you have the content loops and the way that can be like, you don't even need to have the finite control now, you can just have the content now and all those kind of different options.
Yeah, it takes a little bit getting used to, and also get experience in what works and what doesn't work for you to
It's
kind
a
of
block, but
figure
it's
out.
blocks.
Yeah. Well, I remember the time when I would try to get the pagination block on my page and it didn't go. it didn't
Oh,
show
that.
because it was not inside the query block. It
Yeah,
was
you're
outside.
reminding me. There used to be a thing where it used to, I think there was a while where it could easily just go outside
Mhm.
and it would just hang around just outside and it would never error. So you would never know why it was erroring. And it would just be like, that is pagination. And you could click the pagination and go up and down it, but it wouldn't do anything. But that also shows how far we've come because if you have that now, it would give an error. And
Yeah.
now, like a lot of the system is interactive enough to self-correct itself, and it'd be like no query found, or there's a lot of like error catching and correction in the system, or it'd be like, no, that block has to be within the container.
Or it
So
doesn't show up if it's not inside the container.
yes,
So
yeah, which is
yeah,
like the refinements and the polish, which is it brings us lovely back to 6.8. I don't know.
right, right, right. Yeah, yeah.
But that's part of it, right? With all
Yeah.
these complexities.
Yeah. And I think the next one is a separator block that can now also be diffs instead of a horizontal line. So it can be styled,
Mm,
better
yeah,
styled, and it also is not announced because it's a decorative thing. It's not announced through
yeah,
the page reader,
yes.
the screen reader. Uh,
Which was always interesting to listen to initially the screen reader doing the spacer block and then when you hadn't done it correctly and then doing the separator block and it was like rah rah and he was like shouting at people.
yeah, well, we laugh about it, but I think for
It's
someone
not
who needs a
good.
screen reader, it's
Yeah.
not funny.
No, I mean, but that's the thing. It's like you're laughing at the refinement,
Right,
but
right,
it's
yeah.
good, and only because of the really awesome feedback that we've had from the accessibility team and the learnings that we've done, have we been able to get on that. And I think again that shows that the learnings and the refinement and the collaborative work that has gone on behind the scenes between the team. We're laughing with the gentleness of history, I think, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what we were able to do.
Yeah, and until you hear actually a screen reader shouting at you,
Mm.
you have no idea how that actually works. Yeah, so it's always been an epiphany for me to kind of talk with people
Yeah.
who know how to use a screen reader, yeah,
Mhm.
or teach me how to do it and do it myself. Yeah,
Yeah.
and then you say, oh no, that's wrong. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So the next part is about Stylebook. We
Yeah.
talked about Storybook. That's a developer
Yeah.
stuff. Stylebook,
Yeah.
it's a designer stuff, but that's in the editor. And the Stylebook actually lets you go through all the blocks on your site
Yeah.
with the style attached to it. So if you
Hmm.
use one of the style variation and you open
Right.
up the Stylebook, you see how each of the blocks, image block, paragraph block,
Yeah.
quotes kind of look with that particular style, and you can
Yeah.
actually edit it. And as I said, there was something like it's a site editor thing, but now the Stylebook screen comes also to the classic theme. And that I think is a really good move to have that there because there have been for 8 years using having blocks displayed in classic themes, yeah, and not something like a Stylebook was available. Now it is.
Well, the only option before was to get the block theme test data and then put it in. And then generally, people, when you release the site, you had a page. And then on that page, you listed every block. I'm laughing at the work I've done.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you.
I,
Yeah,
I
I
love Star, but often I surprise clients by showing them it. They're like, "Oh, where'd that come from?" And the reason I like it is because I use the editor like Dreamweaver. And one of the things that I find is when I laid my foundations in a theme, I will then go straight to Starbit. So I'll do the foundations, the color, the typography, blah, blah, blah. And then don't make that noise, but yeah. And then I go to Stylebook and I'm like, okay, particularly color. So one good thing I'll be able to do, calendar, always like I can be like, oh yeah, no, the colors don't necessarily going to reflect so well. So I make sure that I get in like my naming and my colors and all those kind of things going so that I can have that dynamic base that
mhm.
pulls in on different blocks depending on what the block is and all those kind of ways that I can have like borders and shading and different things. So that's one of the things that I try and do when I'm pulling something through. And that can be whether I'm doing a base theme or whether I'm using like Ollie or any number of different themes as a foundation. Doesn't matter. That's exactly the same as a child theme. Doesn't matter. It's exactly the same approach every single time.
Mhm.
And Starbuck, whenever I show someone, they're like, oh, I want to use this. Still waiting for the day where I can have it detached and front end show someone, because I
Mhm,
still think that that would be chest
mhm,
kiss, because the amount of projects I've had to like do Zero or something like that, or those kind of like other tools that you have to use on top of it. But yeah.
mhm. Yeah. No, I really like the Storybook. Yeah, I remember the time where I had a GitHub gist with all my test blocks and variations of the block and kind of how that's
Yeah.
gonna work. Yeah. Yeah, and the next one is also a Stylebook one. That is a render overview colors in 4 columns. So one
Mm.
of the new features is that the color variations, I think is the right terminology, are now
Yeah.
shown on top of the Stylebook. So you can
Mm-hmm.
see when you change the style variations, how the
Mm-hmm.
colors actually change. And it's
Mm.
really cool. Yeah.
Mhm. So post editor, I guess we're moving to. So we have inline commenting, added new sidebar as extension of the canvas, and with inline commenting, we order the comments in the sidebar, and UX enhance with the comments. So this is all really adding the commenting and getting us on the path to that awesome work as well.
Yeah, it's the collaborative effort, and inline commenting is kind of asynchronous. It's not synchronized collaborative.
Hmm.
You can only see it when you enable the experiments for it,
Yeah,
but it's really cool, where you
yeah,
can add the comments per block and then you can reply to it. And there are some quirks with it in terms of in the list of posts where you see the number of comments, but it never matches what the comments are. So
mm.
there's some kind of a bug in there, but as long as the feature isn't settled yet, yeah, I
Yeah,
don't think there's a sense in fixing that one, yeah,
yeah.
because that's the last thing to
Yeah,
fix.
if
But
you've used Google Doc comments, you can use this. I think that's the
yeah,
best way to describe it to someone.
mhm,
It's very like how you would expect commenting to work.
yeah, yeah, try it out, and if it doesn't, post some feedback on GitHub.
Yeah, try it out, and if you find a bug, report it.
Yeah,
See it, report
bug report.
it.
Yeah. So that's about the enhancements of 19.9. It's a pretty solid release and has a lot of bug fixes as well. There is one thing from the bug fixes that I wanted to point out, I think. That was for the sync patterns. The content only block was editing mode was removed because it's not really, yeah, if you want to sync pattern, you want to edit the content. So the editing mode was kind of reversed to do that. Just in case you ran across it and you couldn't edit your patterns. And then documentation improvements, or a lot of storybook updates were there, as well as the documentation of the fields package, which is a part of the data views package for the developers that are, if you use the data views outside of the site editor for your own plugins, you definitely want to look at the fields package.
And there is a deprecation on icons, which is important to think about if you're looking at using the design system. So warning has been renamed to caution field. And the only reason I raise that is if you're already using it in your design system, being aware that like icons have changed. But again, in the storybook, you'd be able to find that information.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And I think I think that's all I
Did we
wanted.
do one of the releases? I'm very excited if
We
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 did
are
one.
done with 19.9. Now we come to
Down.
Gutenberg 20.0.
Oof.
And 20.0 means that's the 200th release of
Ooh.
Gutenberg. Yeah, who would have thunk in June 2017 that
I
we will
wouldn't.
have the 200th release? Who was ever kind of thinking that far? Yeah, there are
Nope.
274 merge PRs by 71 contributors. 13 of them were first-time contributors. I think that's one of the largest numbers of first-time contributors
Mm.
for a Gutenberg plugin. So, and the project came with 83 enhancements and 82 fixed bugs. We are not going to read through all 83 of them. Sorry, people.
My brain's still stuck on the 200th as
Yeah,
from
yeah,
it was
and you are
around the
the one
first.
of
I'm
the,
like,
yeah, you were part of the original team,
yeah,
yeah, for
yeah,
many, many years, 3 or 4 years.
yeah.
I think so,
Which I
yeah.
think is like the first few are always unexciting, but that's because you're just like first few pancakes. But I think if
What is
if
that
we maybe start
expression
from
saying?
10.
Sorry, sorry, sorry. I need to kind of go back to what are you doing pushing pancakes?
So like your first pancake is always like not such a good one.
Oh,
It's like the
okay.
first pancake you put out, right? Like that's like the first like few releases of something that you put out are just like, yeah, you're just good. But you're not counting those because you're just like releasing, you're just getting it out, right?
Hmm.
But by 200, and the thing that I'd like to reflect is like the cadence, and I think that that's the important thing. So with WordPress, we're very used to having regular releases throughout the year, but they generally have like a gap now. You're having like three or so like throughout a year. That's our cadence. But with Gutenberg, because of its plugin format, you're having that real frequency of release. So we've kind of got into that habit of like a proper sprint release is what people have got into. And the sheer amount of things that go into it.
Yeah,
it's
just
it's
amazing.
overwhelming. Every time I come and do this, I'm like,
Yeah. So
it's a lot.
who reviewed all that? Yeah, kind of. Yeah, each
Yeah.
PR has a review, and because a
Yeah.
lot of people
And
have done.
testing.
Yeah.
HBR has someone that creates it, the original issue, someone that works on it, someone that then tests it, someone that then documents it, someone that then pushes it. Well, it has at least two people that will review it.
Hmm.
And then there's so much work. So at least probably 5 to 7 people have touched it per PR
Yeah,
potentially.
yeah, yeah. And it's so important to have a few different views in there to really fix all the
Mm.
bugs before it kind of gets released, but you're never successful in that. But I also like, I sometimes go back to some of the issues as well as the PRs. And sometimes they're a year old, or yeah, the kind
Hmm.
of they are started with a brilliant idea, but the software wasn't there yet. But then
Hmm.
people keep looking at it and say, is it there yet? Is it there yet?
Well,
Yeah,
we
can
couldn't
we
have
do this?
achieved
Yeah,
most back then. We couldn't have achieved most of what we do
right.
now, which is why it's everything should be relooked at. I
Hmm.
often
Yeah.
say, like, if anything really is left of the interface when I first worked on it, we maybe have a problem because, because it should be iterated and changed on. Because even down to animations and interactions, we know more how people work on. People have changed and adapted. There's a whole pandemic happened.
Hmm.
You know, people interact, devices have changed. Look at Playground, look at what can be done with devices.
Hmm.
And I guess that kind of leads us on to even looking at like these lists. You know, you look at the blocks, you know, the thing that we have listed here is like the block library, I guess. You have the details block.
Hmm.
That strikes me being in this release. The details block was something that, you know, when it originally came out, it was the paragraph block, right? The first block. And
Hmm.
then it's added up. So now we have a details block, we have a page list, social lines block, links block, and all these different blocks that are also maintained on top of everything as well.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah, we also have old widget blocks. Yeah, the kind of
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
latest posts kind of thing
Yeah.
is kind of, yeah, really outdated. It should be deprecated because you have the query block now for that. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's evolving. So
Yeah.
what's in 20.0? So there is a enhancement on the create block scaffolding tool, or two of
Mm-hmm.
them. So now you can use external templates and customize more fields. And then the other part is that you have a default template that helps you with the multiple block plugin case. Up until now, it was only you could create a plugin with a block, and then you had to get the additional blocks in with a certain flag. And
Mm-hmm.
now it's kind of a little bit easier, I think, to do that. I like this tool. A create block is such a neat way to
Love
start
it.
out with a block and then
Yeah.
just focus on the editor and the front end, and you don't have to, yeah, all the plumbing.
I love it. And to me, it means that it stands with other, going back to when we were talking about cursor, it uses it, it
Mhm.
picks it up. And I think by if I looked at any other language that I've started playing around with, they all have their own versions
Mhm.
to do scaffolding. So it makes it of a par with that and just easier. Can you do it by hand? Yes, of course. You can do your own thing, but it also helps from a learning perspective. And then you can just do it right from the start.
Mhm.
Same as I love the Create Block theme plugin. You know, all these
Great.
tools. Can I hand code a theme? Yes. Can I
Sure.
hand code a block? Yes. Can I do other things while those tools are doing it for me? Yes. so, so it's about the tools doing it. And also with what you're saying, it's going to mean that I'm doing it, I'm having that foundation to then build up on top of.
Yeah, and you do it the same time over and over again. So
Yeah.
maintainability is also pretty big with using that. There's also a WP environment, the development environment that comes with Gutenberg, and now has multi-site support.
That's
It's
big.
definitely increasing the footprint of
Yeah.
the developers who are going to use it. So the block library has some consistent work done where the block sidebar has changed the component, and brave contributors go block by block and make it consistent going through that. So it is a different panel, and it uses a tools panel item and the tools panel instead of the settings panel. It's definitely, they changed the components out of it and used the tools panel drop down for that.
So in this release, we've also got some focus on Starbook. So we've got give Starbook its own route so it can be linked to directly, and add the appearance design menu through admin action. So again, this is like iterating on Starbook and improving it more, which is really, really exciting. I'm kind of curious to test out the linking to it directly as well to see if what that happens with permissions. So if it achieves what I wanted it to kind of
Yes.
do.
Good idea, but I think you
Yeah.
need to have some
I
admin.
do. I don't think it's quite the front facing thing
No,
that
it's
I'm
not.
kind of
No, no.
wanting, but we're getting there.
In there, yeah, the its own route is really powerful. Yeah, when you
Yeah.
you want to
Yeah.
link to it. Yeah, and then the block hooks got was some two additional enhancements. One is to apply the block hooks to post content on the front end and the editor so people can see it. And the other one is in sync pattern to actually also apply the block hooks.
Mm.
So before then, the block hooks wouldn't work in patterns. Now they do. Block hooks
Mm.
is a method to add a block to another at the end or at the beginning of another block for display. And now with this release, you can also see it in the editor and edit there. So the user has a little bit more control over the blocks that are automatically added.
Speaking of kind of tools, there's add a under plugin. There's add a playground blueprint JSON to the assets blueprints folder of plugin repo. So anytime I see anything about playground, I get super excited. For those that haven't kind of explored it, the way that I describe it is a collection of awesome recipes to be able to either pre-run or from testing to your plugin, or to be able to just run. So you can even run a testing PR with them. There's just so much that you can do with them in the browser. You can either have single installs, or you can have a bit more perpetual sites as well with Playground.
Mhm.
And it's just really, really powerful and getting more powerful.
Yeah, and if you want to learn more about blueprints, the playground new interface for the last 2 months actually has the blueprint gallery coming into the playground interface.
Uh,
So you can actually read through them and test them
mhm.
out right away. And they are kind of really cool as examples to, okay, if it can do that, then maybe it can also do that. And you have a
Yeah.
blueprint on how to do this. So I love that. And well, I built some of the blueprints, so I'm really excited about getting those done. And my next thing is one is to enable all the experiments or more than one experiment in the Gutenberg repo and have a playground for that. And the next one, and that's just merged into the blueprint gallery. But I also am thinking about the distraction-free writing experience that if you have a playground to just do writing. So you need to have the
Mm.
distraction free enabled and some other things that need to be enabled. But so you can really have a writer try it out without having all the
Yeah.
distraction things.
I love that idea that you could use Playground to test modes, like what you're suggesting. And that's also really important to say with Playground, you can also, and we're going to go into like a sidetrack of Playground, but with Playground, you can also install plugins, and that's something that often is not thought of. So the recipe can also be add woo, add this, add that. So it can be the whole configuration setup. As you're saying, it's not just open the editor at a certain point. It's not like an if this then that workflow. It's also like installing things and configuring them as well.
Yeah, and you could even import some demo content, because most plugins only shine when you actually have content to look at.
Yeah, it's true.
And
Yeah.
and the Hello World not always does it. So
Could I have it with Stylebook lockdown, or I'm just like, is this
mm,
how I get my style book?
yeah, and now with Root, you could actually make the
Yeah.
style book your landing page.
And that's how I get my design system on. Oh, okay, now we solved my problem. How do we solve the next problem on the changelog? So we solved both our problems today. So
Yes.
moving on from that, we have write mode. Allow template part editing in write mode. Anything that is improving write mode is also exciting for me because it's one of those little paper cut is probably like a small version of it, but it's an easing of the experience to me, and that is also really useful. So I'd love to see these iterations over time as well.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, and I for the longest time I wasn't really getting what the difference is between design mode and write mode, but now, yeah,
Uh-huh.
with the template part,
Yeah.
I'm actually getting it. It's really
I
cool.
describe the difference between using Google Docs and Dreamweaver. That's the best way I can describe for me
It's
personally.
very good analogies for for a long
Doesn't
time
hold
web
up though
developer.
when you add things in.
So, yeah. Yeah, so well, this is a fun show, and I think we're through with 20.0. Yes, so
Two down.
two down, one to go, and it only had 94 PRs, so it's not
Oof.
that much in there. But the Gutenberg 20.1 has not been released yet at the time of this recording, and so it will be released on January 22nd, will be the release of 2020. There's a lot of 20s in my life at the moment.
There are. Yeah.
So it's 20.1. All right. Yeah. So what does it bring?
This has a lot of things again in the block library. This is the details block. It's really refinements with the allowed block attributes there. And that reminds me of a lot of these blocks are created and then I need to be gone over again. And that's something you were saying about going over the components and then bring them in. But a lot of these, a new feature like allowed block attributes or different things happen. And then you need to go back over the old blocks and reiterate them because they maybe came out after or before and different things. So yeah, some of that's going. Page lists, add color support. Anything that sees adding support to a block gets me very excited from a
Oh,
themer
yeah.
perspective.
Yeah.
And social links button, add clear button for color option. That seems like a small thing, but I know how important that is. The
Yeah.
clear's color is really, really important.
Yeah. Every time I say, where did this go wrong? I say, let's clear the colors first.
Yes. And then with I kind of maybe move on to design tools because that's kind of the next one after that. But with post comment link showing border controls by default and query total show border controls by default. Again, that's deciding on the best defaults is also something you only know when you first release something. You're not too sure, particularly with the design tools. And to give a frame of design tools, that's anything from borders to backgrounds to color, anything that is styling things. And it's generally the things that are in theme JSON with the tooling visualized. So that's when we're talking about design tools. It's the visual knobs and things that you dials that you can push to do that pull and interact with theme JSON. That's a weird way of framing it, but that's the best way I can put it. And a lot of these defaults are guessed first time when something comes out. So the post comment link, a guess will have been cummed up that needed to be on, that needed to be off. So by having these things adjusted, it means that feedback was given that should be on by default or this should be off by default.
But there are so many people. That's just a 50-50 decision, yeah. But people
Yeah.
are not 50-50, yeah. So
No.
sometimes they want it, and sometimes they don't want it. And
Yeah.
but yeah, I
Remember the
had a
toolbar
yeah,
where the option had to
right.
be added because that's constantly my example of like there is no good answer.
No, but there is a shortcut, a keyboard
There is an
shortcut.
answer, put an option in.
And also, yeah, remember it. That was also a part of it. Yeah,
Yeah.
does
Yeah. Yep.
block editor remember me? Yeah,
Yeah.
or my choices. Yeah, so Yeah, the clearable option, the color picker, is also available for the navigation block. And it now surfaces the menu name in the list view. That's for the navigation block. That was something that people just wouldn't recognize, the various menus in the list view. And the list view is your friend. So yeah, whatever we do for the list view is actually really a quality of life and enhancements there. So the next one is, I'm not quite sure what this refers to, but maybe you know, the new
I'm not
default
sure
rendering
about
mode.
this one either, I'll be honest.
Okay.
So it's a new default rendering mode for editor via post type supports. Looking at it a little bit, what it seems to be doing is similar to what I was saying, which is it basically says it updates how the new default rendering mode can be set for a post type. So to me, it responds to feedback given. So it says it doesn't require REST endpoint or any API related changes. So reading kind of between the lines, it says that it would be the feedback had been given on that. And so it says existing add post type support can be used to change or reset the default rendering mode. And then it gives some code examples to that.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it's giving options that you can decide on defaults, which is
Yeah.
what you
And
were saying about
yeah.
really we don't always know, but initially you have to make a best bet and
Mm-hmm.
then you can bring those refinements in.
And then there's an enhancement for the data views, that it adds a media field to the UI for content preview of the posts and pages in the grid view.
I get
So it's
excited
kind of,
about
yeah,
anything coming into data views.
data
I
views,
always
yeah.
do.
And it's kind of for the media field is really important for featured
Yeah.
images and all that.
I know it's an experiment, but being able to just play around and any new feature that comes into data views is just exciting to be able to play with.
Yeah. Yeah, I find them so much modern, and I really would love to have make a kind of a snip decision or snip feature that kind of switches out the WP admin with the data views. But of course, it cannot be that
The,
fast
I
because
think you
there's
have to go a
20.
little bit gently with humans.
Yeah. What a friend of mine said, that's for you humans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that that's why we have experiments, right? We're going to make sure that the cake is having some testing. I know at core days in Rome, that was something that the ad was definitely sharing that by it being in there, it can be tested, it can be all,
Yes.
the best version can be done. And then really those people call them edge cases, I call them stress cases because they cause stress.
Yes. Yeah.
They can be felt afterwards and implemented. Otherwise, it would just take way too long to do. So at the moment, it's the best case. That's what data views are. And that doesn't mean it's all the cases. So
Right.
that's
Right.
part of
Yeah.
the work with data views is really to go back over it and make sure it does all the work. And if you think of WP admin, anything to come out of the isolated view really has to just do all the work. And that's something I'm very aware when I'm looking at what design things can I bring through. It's
Mhm.
like sprinkles at the moment is the best way I can put it, because it has to be stuff that's really, really packaged and baked already.
Yeah, yeah. And looking at how the WP admin had been extended by plugins for
Oh,
20 years, yeah.
how has it not been extended
Yeah,
by a
yeah.
plugin at this point?
So,
Because it's been so long, right? Like
right.
it's so long and tried and tested and it's known and it's so that's something when you bring something new, it will be there and we'll be talking in a couple of years as if it had always looked that way. And it
Yeah.
will be the WP admin. It will just be a case of it has to be done in a certain way,
Mhm.
because and then everybody will be able to use it and understand it and implement it in that
Yeah.
way.
But that's actually a very good way to end this
Mm,
podcast. I think we're through
yeah.
with 20.1,
3 for
and we
3.
we did three in one. It's
Whee!
really good. Yeah. And
Thank
so thank you so much, Tammie, for being here.
you for having me.
I'm so glad we are back in 2025 with Gutenberg Changelog podcast. And as always, the show notes will be published on gutenbergtimes.com/podcast. And this is episode 113, 113th. And if you have questions and suggestions or news you want to include, send them to changelog@gutenbergtimes.com. And you can also leave, if you listen to that on Spotify, Spotify also gives you a feature to comment on it. That's a great place to leave to leave questions so we can answer them in the next episode. And thank you everyone for being a listener here, and welcome back to 2025. And thank you, Tammie, for taking the time out of your life to be on the show and share all the good things with us.
Thank you so much.
All right. You take care.
You
Bye.
take care too. Bye.